It's the right time to discuss the state of the nation. Mr. Speaker, let me first start by sending my condolences and the delegation that I lead to the 39 families whose children died in the last 1 week. The Kenya National Commission on Human Rights has told us that 36 were injured, 627 young people were arrested, and 32 have disappeared. Mr. Speaker, disappearances and extrajudicial killings have returned to this country, despite the promises that were made during the campaigns. I also wish to sympathize with the traders who have lost their property across the nation. Mr. Speaker, even though not related, allow me to take this opportunity to send my condolences also to the family of the late Joe Barage Wanjui. Those who know Joe Wanjui, he was a chancellor at the University of Nairobi. He is a foremost businessman in this country. And I send condolences because, Mr. Speaker, Joe Wanjui gave me an opportunity to join the financial services world. When I left the university, he never cared about my last name. He cared about my ability to serve. And Mr. Speaker, may his soul rest in peace, and we shall remember his sophisticated humility, which I have struggled to emulate. Mr. Speaker, last week when I was in church, the young people told me when I come to this house, I must read out Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12. For we fight not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers. The Gen Zs are not fighting against flesh and blood. Theirs is a fight against principalities and powers, rulers of darkness and wickedness in high places. Gen Zs don't want to kill anybody, even though we are killing them. We have snipers in this building to kill our young people. They are not fighting flesh and blood, Mr. Speaker. It is about wickedness in high places, parliament, state house, city hall, governor's premises, across the nation. It is wickedness in high places that the Gen Zs are fighting against. It was not even the finance bill, Mr. Speaker, that was the problem. The finance bill was a catalyst. All this started when we decided to force on Kenyans a housing law. In fact, it's a good thing that those young people came to parliament, because we are the ones who passed a housing law and told the young people they can go to hell if they want. We are the ones who passed a health law, which nobody understands today. Mr. Speaker, those people who work for the National Health Insurance Fund, they have no certainty. They don't know whether they have a job. Leave alone a job, they don't even know whether they have a health cover. And yet they work for the National Health Insurance Fund. It was this parliament that brought about that kind of wickedness, that many of our people today do not have health cover. Today, children in schools do not have health cover, something that we thought would be a constitutional guarantee. It was taken away, and this parliament kept quiet about it. Mr. Speaker, the Gen Zs are fighting about the neocolonialism that we are seeing today. When Kenyans are complaining about their government, the first person to respond to us is the American ambassador in PowerPoint presentations, telling us how our elections are free and fair, telling us how our president has been sent from God, and telling us that we are making the right decisions, that we should persevere. Gen Zs are tired of that neocolonialism and double standards. Someone told to me that if those protests were about the rights of persons of the LGBTQ community, Mr. Speaker, and 39 people were dead, the Western world would have frozen aid, they would have frozen external assistance to Kenya. Are the lives of gays and lesbians more important than the lives of the 39 that we have talked about? We saw what happened in our neighboring country, Uganda. They came up with laws that limited the rights and freedoms of persons of that orientation. And Uganda has now been denied funding. The Speaker of the Assembly in Uganda is being hounded out of office. She cannot even travel, Mr. Speaker. We do not want the double standards of neocolonialists, and we pray that the Gen Zs in America will do the right thing. Mr. Speaker, the arrogance that we have displayed as a leadership, the tribalism that we have been expressing and calling it shareholding. Shareholding is nothing when it comes to national politics. It is pure tribalism. It is ethnic jingoism. It is ethnic chauvinism. Mr. Speaker, we are talking here with Senator Omtata, asking ourselves, Why do you need a voter's card when you already have a national ID? And that has been the system in this country, to disenfranchise certain parts of this country. We have been around through electoral processes, and we know that the registration of voters is a first step for rigging of elections. Mr. Speaker, I want to ask the majority and minority leaders that in that motion, that we should push to ensure that in this country, once you have a national ID card, then you can automatically become a voter. Because I've heard the arrogant politicians, those who voted yes to the finance bill last week, saying that Gen Zs will not take them anywhere because, after all, they are not registered as voters. Once you are a citizen, you've got a right to vote. And we should not introduce additional bureaucracies in the name of registration of voters. The last time we did that exercise, this country spent 7 billion Kenya shillings on biometric voter registration equipment. Those are the areas where we could make savings. If we could take that 7 billion that I am sure that the IBC is going to ask for another round of voter registration, that amount of money can take care of the doctors, can take care of the junior secondary school teachers. Mr. Speaker, we have annoyed the Gen Zs by our fake religious fervor. The religious fundamentalism that is in this country, Mr. Speaker, where we go to churches, and then we say that the persons we vanquished are children of a lesser God, that the victors are the ones who pray to the true God. Today, Gen Zs have told us that the voice of the youth is a voice of God. Mr. Speaker, I've reflected and I've looked at what Wole Soyinka wrote. I think it was Soyinka who wrote The Trouble with Nigeria. And Soyinka said, it was Chinua Achebe. It was Achebe who did the Trouble with Nigeria. He said, there is no problem with the Nigerian land, the Nigerian soil, the Nigerian air, the Nigerian water, the Nigerian seas and lakes. The trouble with Nigeria, as is the trouble with Kenya, is the failure of leadership. It is a cult of mediocrity. It is indiscipline and it is corruption. Mr. Speaker, ever since Achebe made those very, very interesting remarks more than 20, 30 years ago, Kenya has not learned a lesson. I am so happy about this revolution that our young people have brought upon us, because it is going to change the architecture of our politics. Before, the people who mattered were the leaders and owners of parties. Today, the true bosses are the youngsters, the Gen Zs, our brothers and sisters, our sons and daughters. Mr. Speaker, I heard the president say that he wants to set up certain committees to go around the country to find out what the youth want. But why do you ask for a job when you don't know what the people who elected you want, Mr. Speaker? And sometimes we can propose a lot of things, and yet the solutions lie here in this constitution. We have a chapter or an article, Article 55 of the Constitution, which talks about specific application of rights with respect to youth. And so instead of the president wasting taxpayers' money with another BBI like circus, I invite the president to read Article 55. That says the state shall take measures, including affirmative action programs, to ensure that the youth access relevant education and training, have opportunities to associate, be represented, and to participate in political, social, economic, and other spheres of life, that the youth can access employment, and that they are protected from harmful cultural practices and exploitation. You don't need a committee to go around the country to come and tell you that, because the framers of our constitution already put it there. What do the Gen Z want, Mr. Speaker? The Gen Z wants us to be faithful to this constitution, especially the Bill of Rights, the rights and fundamental freedoms in this constitution, which belong to each individual and are not granted by the state. And the responsibility of the state, as far as the rights are concerned, is to observe, to respect, protect, promote, and to fulfill the realization of those rights. Why do you have to set up committees and dialogue teams? And yet, in the Constitution, it says every Kenyan has got a right to life. That right to life is not abortion. Those boys who are felled by snipers outside this parliament, we have violated their right to life. The young people want equality and freedom from discrimination. That is an obligation of the state in this constitution. It should not matter whether you are chariot, whether you are karaoke, for you to access jobs. The other day, I'm watching on TV as leadership of KEFIS, Kenya Plant Health Inspectorate Scheme, are talking about a new system that they've launched. The first person to speak sounds like he comes from Meru. The second person to speak sounds like he comes from Meru. The third one to speak sounds like he comes from Meru. The Minister for Agriculture is a former senator for Meru. It should not matter where you come from, because I don't think that Plant Health Inspectorate Services, the expertise only resides in a certain part of the country. But that has been duplicated in each and every ministry. You go to the ICT ministry, everyone perhaps is Otieno, Onyango, Odongo. You go to another ministry of roads, everyone is
Senator
chariot.
Fomeru, Senator Kajwang just yield. Senator Fomeru, we agreed before. Just take a seat. Just take a seat. We agreed before. I'm talking Senator Kathuri. We agreed as a ground rule that there shall be no points of order. Now, there's a reason for that. And honorable senators, to get a boil to heal, you don't caress it. If you need the boil to heal, you must squeeze it really hard. Now, that process of squeezing is pretty painful. But if we need to get out of this place where we are, we just have to squeeze this boil. So, Senator Kathuri, I will give you an opportunity where you're going to lay your case and nobody is going to raise a point of order on you. Conclude, Senator Kajwang.
Mr. Speaker, when dry bones are mentioned in a proverb, some people feel jittery. I am talking about the rights and fundamental freedoms that are in the Constitution. Every Kenyan deserves a right to work in public. And that is what the young people are asking for. They are asking for human dignity to be observed. Our people want to be treated properly, like human beings. They don't want to be treated like animals, like we have seen out there in the streets. Our young people want freedom of conscience, religion, belief, and opinion. They want freedom of expression. They want freedom of association, freedom to assemble, to demonstrate, to picket and petition, and not to be greeted by bullets. Mr. Speaker, when we talk about 39 people dead, it's as if we are counting heaps of logs of firewood. These are children of people. There's a mother somewhere shedding tears today, Mr. Speaker. There is a father somewhere talking about the lost opportunities as a result of a young person doing what he was told he can do comfortably under this constitution. When you talk about the 39, we are talking about Ibrahim Kamau. Ibrahim Kamau had just left high school, Mr. Speaker. He was felled by a sniper outside this parliament. He was killed within the presence of parliament. We are talking about David Chege, a computer science graduate from Jomo Kenyatta University, felled by a sniper's bullet outside this parliament. The blood has not died in the grass of parliament. We are talking about Eric Shieni, a university student. We are talking about Evans Kiratu, who was killed by a tear gas when tear gas exploded on him. We are talking about Rex Kanyike, Brian Kasaine. Gen Z are saying, grant us the rights that are due to us in the Constitution. More importantly, Gen Zs are demanding that the economic and social rights that are granted unto them in this Constitution and which belong to them, it's not granted by the state. The duty of the state is to fulfill it. These rights belong to the Gen Zs and to the people of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, you don't need a committee of rocket scientists. You don't need a committee of experts. You don't need people from the United Nations to come and interpret for you this Constitution. The answers to the problems are all here. Gen Zs are saying, let us ensure that Chapter 6 of this Constitution is observed and fulfilled, because we have made leadership, and particularly political office, an opportunity to lord over other people and not to serve them. Mr. Speaker, I believe that if the government sat back and reflected, they would realize that all the answers and all the solutions are here. I want to propose further, Mr. Speaker, as we craft this motion and as a leader of majority brings further amendments. I am particularly disturbed when I see the military walking around the streets of Nairobi. Mr. Speaker, we have seen what has happened in neighboring countries. Let us not tempt our military. Let us keep them in the barracks. Let them do the spectacular job they have always done of defending and protecting this nation from external aggression. When you bring the military to the streets, it is like exposing a child to sugar or a child to honey. It has been seen before, it has happened before. South Sudan, Maine, Mr. Speaker. Sudan was a big economy. It was booming. The agricultural sector, the petroleum and mining sector was booming. Sudan is now in shambles. Ethiopia, Mr. Speaker. Ethiopia was an economy that was competing with Kenya. It was poised to overtake Kenya. Safaricom went into Ethiopia, and Kenyan banks and insurance companies wanted to go into Ethiopia. It was messed up by the military. Our resolution, despite what the High Court has done and what the National Assembly did, let the military take the tanks back to the barracks. That should be a resolution of this House. Number two, Mr. Speaker, I have heard some instances of sibling rivalry. Because the Senate is sitting and the National Assembly is in hiding, there are people who are saying, scrap the Senate. Mr. Speaker, I want to tell those who say scrap the Senate that we've got a good record as a Senate. We have referred 146 cases to the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. And Mr. Speaker, out of the 146 cases, very few of them have been investigated or prosecuted to the final conclusion. And we have told EACC we are going to bring them here before the Committee of the Whole. And Mr. Speaker, I want to tell Gen Z, please pay EACC a visit. There is a problem there. You guys need to go and visit and say hello to the EACC because we have a problem. Mr. Speaker, this House, in terms of accountability, has impeached at least 5 governors. That is 10% of the counties. Can our brothers tell us how many ministers they have impeached? This House has gone to the Supreme Court to seek opinions that has developed jurisprudence in this nation. This House in unison marched to Milimani. And Mr. Speaker, in our march to Milimani, the late Senator Haji, the Senator Gideon Moi, the senators that you could not imagine were the ones who were leading our march to Milimani on the concurrence matter. Mr. Speaker, this Senate has taken its services and its sittings out of Nairobi. And I think we've gone to 4 counties. This Senate has organized legislative conferences and devolution conferences. They should tell us the last time the National Assembly sat outside Nairobi. But it does not matter, Mr. Speaker, because in the end, the difference between us and them is like the difference between a cheetah and a leopard. And in my community, we have one name for both. And so it does not matter whether we voted yes or no. We are all collectively in this. Mr. Speaker, the SRC matter has been dealt with, and I think perhaps what we should have said is that what should have gone to MPs as a salary increment should be redirected to a certain course, perhaps the course of doctors or the course of the junior secondary school teachers. I would like in this motion, Mr. Speaker, for the majority leader to include another action, that the Cabinet Secretary to the Treasury, Professor Njuguna, who has the habit of snubbing the Senate every time we invite him, to invoke Article 225 on any county executive that gets an adverse opinion. What Article 225 talks about is that 50% of funds are withheld until the county comes up with a recovery action plan. And Mr. Speaker, 10% of the money we send to counties is wasted. Not stolen, wasted. Utilized on things that are not necessary. And all our budgets at a national level, 10% is wasted. Mr. Speaker, I want that motion to direct that we go towards a digital government. There are so many meetings that we hold that do not require people to be in the same room. We can do Zoom, we can use virtual technologies, and the Commission should tell us When there was COVID, they told us they were procuring a system to facilitate virtual parliament. Why are we still using Zoom, which cannot work properly and can be hacked? So we must drive towards a digital government. Mr. Speaker, on constitutional commissions, Senator Omtata has made a strong case. We must demand that we are part of parliament and we must be involved in allocation of budgets to constitutional commissions. The Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, Mr. Speaker, is being overshadowed by the Law Society of Kenya. And I want to congratulate the leadership of the Law Society of Kenya. They have stood up for the rights of persons who are involved in this protest. They have done better than the Constitutional Commission that is supposed to guarantee observance of human rights in this republic. They have done better than the Commission on Administration of Justice. The last time I heard my friend and sister, the Ombudsman, speak, she was speaking about Muguka. She was not talking about the rights of people and maladministration in this country, which is supposed to be her duty. I hope Genz can also pay her a visit. Mr. Speaker, the National Gender and Equalization Commission is not doing what they should be doing. I hope they can also be paid a visit. Mr. Speaker, I want to...
Senator Kajwang, 2 minutes to wind up your thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was about to suggest that they pay you a visit, but you have...
With that, kindly take your seat. Proceed.
Mr. Speaker, we shall protect you. And Mr. Speaker, I conclude by supporting and thanking Senator Aaron Cheriot and Senator Mazzaya for this motion. Let us stand for this country. Let us do the right things. If this country burns, Mr. Speaker, we have nowhere to go. You have seen the frustration and the problems our brothers and sisters from South Sudan face. Sudan is in fire. Ethiopia is burning. Our neighboring countries are in problems. The Democratic Republic of Congo is on the precipice. Even Rwanda itself is on the precipice. We cannot afford to go that route. And the person who takes us to that route, Mr. Speaker, will not be the Gen Z. It will be us in office. It will be the wickedness in high places. It will be the principalities and powers that reside in State House, that reside in this Senate, and that reside in the National Assembly that will take us there. If we are the problem, then the Gen Zs have all legitimate rights to kick us out. But let us smell the coffee, let us wake up before it gets too late. I believe that Kenya can be redeemed. Mr. Speaker, I support.
Senator Roba.